What is going on YouTube? Dad with a Bike, and in today's video we're actually going to talk all about Memphis Shades Fairings. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some tips and tricks on how to get them fitted to your bike properly and easily, what some of the cool little features are, and kind of how you handle things like wind buffeting. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about a comparison between the Cafe and the Road Warrior, and whether or not the Cafe actually works to block some of the wind. Is the Road Warrior really that much better when it comes to wind blockage? So stick around, this should be a good one, all about Memphis Shades. Alrighty guys, thanks for sticking around. If you're new to the channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, help me grow the channel. Hit that like, drop me a comment, let me know what you think about this video. And if you have any opinions on the Memphis Shades sets of fairings for the Indian Scout Bobber or any other bike, drop me a comment or drop the group a comment and let's talk about it. Alright, so some of what I'm going to talk about is more specific to the Indian Scout or the Indian Scout Bobber, but also some of this applies just in general if you have bought Memphis Shades Fairing or you're rocking a Memphis Shades Fairing on any other bike, whether it be a Harley or whatever. So now Memphis Shades, they provide a solid, super duper quality product. I've been using Memphis Shades for fairings for quite some time, ever since I've owned the Indian Scout Bobber. And I believe that I've got some unique perspective because I have had 3 different types of fairings from Memphis Shades on this bike. I've had the Gauntlet, the Cafe, and the Road Warrior. Now the biggest challenge that I see that people may have with the Memphis Shades is actually getting it fitted to the fairing and then get it set up. Granted, the instructions that come along really aren't that super helpful, so after you've done it a couple times, you kind of figure out how it's actually supposed to work. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get the brackets on the fork tubes and then how to actually fit properly the fairing onto those brackets. Then we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about wind buffeting, and actually there are a couple things that you can do with the Memphis Shades fairing to improve or adjust wind buffeting depending on how it's hitting you. And then I'm going to give you my experience, my comparison with all 3 Memphis Shades fairings. Now one of the coolest things about the Memphis Shades fairing is that they are a quick release. It's probably one of the best things. So if you like to rock the true naked look, you can take off the fairing. If you really want to have the wind protection, throw the fairing on. It's pretty simple. On the Memphis Shades, there's a bracket. On that bracket, there's these 2 little knobs, one on this side, one on the other side. You simply pull those up and the fairing just pops right off. Pretty simple. Now you might be saying, oh, that's great, but I haven't even got the fairing on yet. I'm having trouble getting the fairing or getting the brackets to a point where I can actually get the fairing over the headlight and fitted correctly. Well, there's a couple things to consider when you're doing that. Number 1 is the headlight extension block. All Memphis Shades fairings require the headlight extension block. If you do not get a headlight extension block, you're going to do yourself an injustice. You're either going to cause more buffeting because things aren't set up correctly, or you're going to cause a fitment issue. So get those headlight extension blocks. The next thing that you're going to want to get is the turn signal relocation kit. So you need the turn signal relocation kit and you need the little headlight block that you can see there. Now there are plenty of people who try to shortcut this. Don't. Go ahead and get the parts. Trust me, it'll make the fitment and all that stuff a whole lot easier when you're walking through the installation. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to make fitting the fairing to those brackets that are on your fork much, much easier. So follow along with me. These are the things that seem to give people the most trouble. They get them on there, they can't figure out how to get them spaced correctly. You can measure them, there's all kinds of different things you could do. But the shortcut that I like to do, which makes sure that I get it measured correctly, is when I install these on my forks, I make sure that they're relatively loose. So loose that I can actually spin them a little bit on the forks. So right now they're tight because I have these set correctly. But you want to make them so that they're loose. And the reason you want to do that is when you bring the fairing up over the headlight, you want to be able to position it and move these around to get one side locked in place. And then you come over to the other side and do the same thing, move these around until you get them locked into place. And then that will help you correctly adjust the distance between the lower and the top bracket. Then once you do that, then you can slide the entire assembly, brackets to include the fairing, up and down depending on your fitment. Now you get some wiggle room, but not a whole lot because the headlight does cover most of the opening that's in that fairing. So the net or the trick of this is keep these loose till you get the fairing set. Then you can easily move these around to get them spaced, and then you can put the other side on and then easily shift it around to get it positioned like you want it. Don't try to wrestle with the whole measurement thing. You can try that, but I promise you it'll be a more headache for you in the long run. Simply keep it loose, kind of sort of fit it, and then move it around to your liking. That is the easiest for me. Makes it so that I can switch this out and do all kinds of different stuff all the time. Super simple, like 5 minutes and I'm done. Now, one of the comments or questions that I get all the time is whether or not the Cafe Fairing actually does any wind protection. It does a little bit. It does a pretty decent job. But again, it's a smaller fairing. It's really only meant to keep it off your chest. So on longer rides, you're still gonna get fatigued because the wind is hitting you probably here and up, and it's not keeping the wind completely off you. Now the Gauntlet is a little bit bigger than the Cafe, but it does change the dynamics of wind buffeting. For example, I'm 5'10". I had the Gauntlet for a while. No matter what I did with that, I couldn't make the wind buffeting comfortable enough. So what I found is that the two fairings that fit me the best are the Cafe and then also the Road Warrior. So let's look at the size difference between the Cafe and the Road Warrior, and then we're gonna talk about, does one work better than the other as far as keeping the wind off you? Okay, so what we're looking at here is the difference between what the Cafe is and what the Road Warrior is. And you can think of the Gauntlet as the middle. But like I said, the Gauntlet for me just did not work due to my height. So the only two that we're giving visual reference here is the Cafe and the Road Warrior. So the Road Warrior is significantly different. The Road Warrior is a fairing that you buy windshields with. And the windshields go all the way from, I don't know, I think 5 inches, like all the way up to 15 or 17. They get pretty tall. That is an 11-inch vented. And when we get into wind buffeting discussion, I'll tell you why that vented is important. But as you can see, there is definitely a physical size difference. So what that tells you is that this will protect you a little bit, and it does. It keeps the wind kind of off the lower part of my body, still hits me in the upper part of my chest. And the helmet, this takes the wind completely off me and only hits the very tippy top of my helmet. So the size difference of those two fairings will tell you that definitely Road Warrior is better for wind protection. Cafe gives you a bit more sleek profile. So let's take a look at what it looks like if we throw both of those on, and we'll give you a little side profile. All right, everybody, so what we have here is we have the Indian Scout bobber fitted with the Cafe Fairing. This gives you the profile of what that looks like. And for visual reference, these bars are 8-inch Titus bars, which actually make them truly right at about 10 inches total. So if you have like 8 to 10-inch bars, this is what it would look like. I'll give you a shot of the front. So as you can tell, it's a very low profile fairing. Now as you're sitting on it, you can truly tell, and I'll put you right up where my face is. This is exactly where my face is. So you can see just how much protection I have. Like I said, this really only pulls it off my chest, doesn't really pull it off my face. If the winds outside are high, or I'm going down the road at a high speed, I'm gonna get a lot of wind on my shoulders and in my head. And yes, it does wear you out after a while if you're doing really long trips. So let's now flip over to the Road Warrior. Now everybody, this is the Road Warrior. This is what it looks like from the profile, and this is what it looks like from the front. So let's sit in the driver's seat, and I'll show you what the difference in wind protection is. You are now looking at my face, or you're at face level. So clearly, a ton more wind protection. When I'm out on the highway and I'm doing 80, 90, 95 miles an hour, I have tons of wind protection. It's great. It's actually kind of dangerous because you don't really tell how fast you're going because it blocks so much wind. It does a really, really good job. Now, one bad thing about when you start getting windshields that are this high and higher is you get a buffeting issue. And Memphis Shades solves that to an extent with this fairing by creating the vented windshield. And this is the vented windshield. And really what it does is when you're driving, flying down the road, what you have is an air pocket coming over you. This is clean wind, meaning it's stagnant or it's not moving around a whole lot. But you've got a lot of wind coming over and a lot of wind coming from the sides. So this disturbs this quiet air and causes it to blow up into your helmet. What these vents do is they let a little bit of air, just enough to come over so that the wind here isn't so calm. So if you do experience buffeting, it isn't bad. Like sometimes I just have no buffeting. Sometimes I'll have a very little bit, but most of the time I have no buffeting. And that is the purpose of that little vent up there. Now with both of the windshields, or both of the fairings, actually all the fairings, with the brackets that get put on the forks, you can actually adjust the lean of the fairing to adjust for wind buffeting even more. And I'll show you what that is, and I'll show you how I have it set up on my Road Warrior. So if you look in here, there are two little bolts right here, little Allen key bolts. And what those bolts do, give me a second, I'll remove my fairing and I'll show you. And what those bolts do is they give you the ability to pitch your windshield forward even more, right? So if you notice, this one here is set back and this one's pulled all the way forward. And then what that does is it creates a forward lean, a little bit, slightly, to the Road Warrior fairing. Works on the Cafe as well, but not as much, but it really works on the Road Warrior. So when it leans forward a little bit, it creates this flow of, as the wind is coming in, hits the fairing, it's dammed further forward more, so then it blows up and goes up higher over my head. So that reduces the wind buffeting almost to zero. I think when I made this adjustment earlier this week, went out for a ride and I noticed zero dirty wind or zero buffeting. So that's another way in which you can handle adjusting for wind buffeting. And folks, there you have it. All about Memphis Shades Fairings. We covered a lot of stuff, I think. We covered kind of the important little key pieces that you need to buy when you get the fairings. We also covered major differences between some of the fairings that Memphis Shades offers. I don't have the Batwing, never tried the Batwing. I'm not a Batwing guy. But hopefully this helps you. If you do end up getting a Memphis Shades fairing, it helps you kind of decide which one you may want. It also helps you, hopefully, fit it a whole lot easier with some of the tricks that I told you. Remember, don't skimp out on the parts for the whole fairing set. Get them all. Extension block, relocators for the turn signals, everything. Now, if you stayed to the end of this video, do me a favor, follow on to one of these super awesome videos or playlists that I've got here. Appreciate everybody's time, watching my videos, supporting the channel, all that good stuff. Thanks for being a part of the family. And with that, we'll leave you. You all have a great one. Y'all be safe, be kind to one another. Peace.